Cornfield, and this is January 22nd. Okay, I think I've explained this to you a little bit, what we're doing, but we're asking everyone, the same body of everyone in the legislature, all the women, and former legislators too, by the way, same body of questions, and then we have these transcribed, and we're making a collection of these, a bound collection for the Kansas State Historical Society. So it's part of a body of material that scholars and other people might want to look at. And I'm going to ask you the same questions. If you feel like you don't want to answer the question, feel free. This is totally, at your discretion. But any kind of questions I don't ask, I'll allow you time at the end then to fill in too. So you might think of that as we go along. Your first year in the legislature was last year, so you're serving your first term.
That's
I want
right.
to kind of establish the time that you're here. Okay, and you're in the House, and you are a Republican. Is that
Right.
correct?
That's right.
Why did you become a Republican, and when did you first affiliate with the party?
Okay, I became a Republican in 1986. In Kansas, that was a big gubernatorial year. There were 7 running for the Republican nomination. And up until that time, I was an unaffiliated voter, always participating but not affiliated with the party. So in '86, when there were 7 running in the Democrat or the Republican nomination, I decided I should affiliate because I knew there were a couple of guys I didn't want, and I didn't know much about the others. And so I decided also about that time I was becoming more aware of my tax burden and just things in general as a taxpayer and a small business owner, and I decided to go ahead and get involved, and you get more information if you're affiliated with the party. You get more mail, you get more things about more candidates, and so I decided to start, instead of just voting name recognition and party, I would decide that I would be an educated voter, and I would find out who these people are and why they're running.
Oh, that's an interesting, kind of an unusual reason too. So you were first elected in 1990. Can you describe your election and how you ran your election campaign?
Yes, after the 1986, when I first got involved with politics, actively really, I decided that I would, the more I got involved, the more I got involved. By the time 1990 came, I had found out a lot about the legislators in my area, my personal representative, and knew he did not reflect the views that I had about business, industry, pro-life, family values, anything that I espoused, this man did not. And as the Republican Party, I asked, do you have someone running against this? And he was a 14-year Democrat incumbent that had been serving in my district. I had been living in that district for 4 years. And they hadn't found anybody. And the more I got involved, and my husband and I discussed it, and I said, dear, I think I'm going to have to run for this House seat because they don't have anybody, and I'm not sending that guy back. So at that time, I had one son who was about, he would have been like 8 or 9 months old when we made the decision to run in June. So he was 14 months when I won, and we came out in January. So we decided that we were Christians, and we prayed about it, and we felt that the Lord did want me to run, because I feel that mothering is my priority and my job. Not my job, but once you have children, that is your responsibility. And not having planned him, I had him though. So we decided that I would make the sacrifice for the 3 months up here, because we felt like things were getting so bad that if I didn't sacrifice the 90 days, he may not have a future. And so we decided that was the decision we would make. As far as my campaign, I declared I had become a member of the Republican Normandy Republican Women in Sedgwick County to get more information, and so I kind of aired with them that this was what I was going to do, and several of them said, oh, you'd be great, yeah, go for it and stuff. And so I just got with my mom and some friends, and we pretty much ran a home out of home. I didn't have a big campaign manager or treasurer. I didn't go talk to anybody else about their campaign. I ran on who I was, what I believed the normal, the average family believed, and if the people agreed with that, they would vote me in, because my philosophy is, why vote one scoundrel in to get another scoundrel out? What have you accomplished if you don't vote somebody in with integrity and honesty and moral values that you espouse? It doesn't do any good to throw the bum out and put another bum in. It's the slogan that's going around the past few years, throw the bums out, and that's fine, and I agree with that. But let's put somebody in that's worth putting in.
Oh, that's interesting. Very quotable quote there. And you mentioned, I believe, your mother and your husband in this process. Did they encourage you to run then, or and help you in your campaign? Who else helped you?
Yes, my mother thinks I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread. I'm one of 6 children, but my mother and I are very close, and she lives in Wichita. And for several years I didn't live. After I graduated from high school, I traveled for 10 years and went around. I lived in New Orleans for a while. I lived in Denver for a while. I visited on the East Coast for 3 months, and then I moved to Hawaii and was there for 3 years. So I've spent 10 years just kind of, after high school, just running around and seeing life and experiencing it, and went to court reporting school and have a background in legal and court reporting. And so my mother and my husband of all things is Canadian, so he doesn't even vote. He's a Canadian citizen, which he chooses to keep his citizenship, because we do have plans at some time in the future to go to Australia and maybe live, and we can get in with him being Canadian as part of the British Commonwealth. We could not if we were both American citizens, without bureaucracy to the max. So that's why he chooses that. But he was very supportive, and that's why I say we worked all that out before I ran. There's no way I would do that and then say, oh, by the way, dear, So we had discussed that. I had several friends that were real involved in my running, that felt like they wanted me. A couple of them don't live in my district, but
are they men or women?
Mainly man and wife. 2 of my closest financial supporters and backers were couples that have children. Also, that some of the families were families that I go to church with, that espouse our same family values, and thought that they're eroding rapidly in the governmental system.
What church is that?
Well, we don't. We attend a family-based home fellowship. We don't really have a name. Right now, we have 11 families that attend there. It's just a fundamental Bible-believing church.
That's interesting. Now, these people campaigned for you. By that, you mean they went door to door and sent out flyers and called people, or what?
No, pretty much the door-to-door was the only people. Well, I had people that took flyers door-to-door, friends and precinct people, and did that a little bit. But the most of the door-to-door, which I did do a lot of, my mother and I did. We took my first son, Alex, because at that time I didn't know I was pregnant with my second son, Carrie, and we would go door-to-door every night, and I would carry Alex for a block or 2, and then my mom would carry him for a block or 2, and it was so cute because we would go for like 2.5 hours every night, and right about the time we're on the last block would be when Alex would start going and start getting tired, and we'd say, 3 more houses, honey, and we're done. And so it was perfect. He knew the schedule, and he went with me every night. And so door-to-door, I pretty much did that with my mother and myself. I had neighbors that would come over when we would do mailings. I would just call people and say, I'm going to do a mailing Friday or Thursday. Can you come over and help address envelopes? So we just pretty much did it in the house. And when I needed people, I called on them, and they came.
Did you use the media at all in your campaign?
I did. I have 2, because I have some rural areas, because I'm from Valley Center. I ran ads in the Valley Center paper, and I also used the Mount Hope Clarion, which covers maize.
Did they support you, these
the papers? Oh, no. Well, I don't think maize endorsed candidates, the Mount Hope Clarion, because the Mount Hope covers so many. There's probably 3 or 4 reps that would be in that, use that paper. But the Valley Center paper does endorse and did endorse Ken Francisco.
Ah.
So.
Okay. Do you think you went door to door? Was that the major part of your campaign? Do you think your door to door part was the thing that helped you?
I think so. In my direct mailings, I did 4 direct mailings, and I thought that was very important. I think also my flyers are not the normal. I don't do anything that's normal or regular. That's just not Darlene Cornfield. And my campaign was run a little bit differently, but I also, my flyers weren't done by a professional agency or anything like that. I wrote them myself. Anybody that's known me for very long, if you were to pick up my flyer and read it, you would say, Darlene wrote that, because it reflects me and who I am. And so they were quite a bit different than the normal flyers. My newsletters kind of have a real popularity about them from here, too, because I don't write the normal newsletter that people write. And I get people all over Wichita and the Sedgwick County area that write me and say, put me on your newsletter list because we enjoy reading your newsletters because they tell us what's really going on.
Well, that's great. I'll have to look them up. It makes me curious to see them. Did a relative or close friend of yours precede you in the House or Senate? Was there any kind of role model or anyone around you?
No, none.
That's kind of interesting, too.
I'm a self-made person.
You described
self-directed.
Self-directed, too. You described your district a little bit, but how would you characterize it? Mainly rural, mainly urban, mixture, small town?
It's pretty much mixture. I have 2 small towns. I have a rural in between those 2 small towns, and then I have a chunk of Wichita. And in that chunk of Wichita, I have probably not one of the highest, but a real wealthy suburb area in it. And I also have the very poorest part of Wichita in my district, and I have a lot of businesses in my district. The Eagle, I rarely ever agree with them, but they did say that the 90th was probably a microcosm of Sedgwick County in general, or Wichita. You know, it has all the aspects of the county in that one district.
Who's the senator for that district?
Well, it's split. My senator in Valley Center is Norma Daniels. Ken Francisco, whom I defeated in the House, got appointed to the Senate seat that Jim Francisco had, and he has Mays and goes around Sedgwick County. So there's a couple of senators that represent parts. I think those are the only 2, though, that
represent part of your district.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem like many of them are that way. I mean, many districts have. It seems like several representatives are in a senator's district, but few representatives have 2
senators. Yeah.
What issues then, if you have this microcosm district, what issues are they interested in? Everything, it sounds like?
Well, I believe that it's rather unfortunate, but I think my district, more so than most of the others in Sedgwick County, which I'm most familiar with, are the apathetic. And I really believe that partially that is due to the poor representation they've had for the last 14 years. I believe that those people are tired of government, tired of the guy representing them. He doesn't vote the way they want him to vote, and therefore they don't vote. The voter turnout's poor in my district. The registration's poor in my district. I have, 20,000 people. I have 9,000 registered voters.
Goodness.
And of those, only 6,000 vote. And that's, I would like to see that increase, and I'm working to do that. I don't only send to people that are registered to vote. I try to get those that are not registered to vote and give them a reason to vote. Not to go vote for the worst of 2 evils, but to give them encouragement to vote for somebody that they feel is really fighting for what they believe in.
Good. That's really interesting. Well, if they weren't interested in issues, then what issues did you campaign on, or did you?
Well, I did. I didn't pick out anything in particular because of the fact of not having the knowledge. You just can't go out and say, I'm going to do this, not knowing that you can't accomplish anything. I wasn't going to be a politician politician. I'm not a politician. I'm a housewife who pays a lot of taxes, who knows all their neighbors pay a lot of taxes, and I wanted to represent them in an honest way.
Mm-hmm.
And so my basic philosophy was, I'm going to go up there and try to stop the tax increases.
Mm-hmm.
And let's get government under control. At that time, 90 was a big deal for the pension plan, the super pension plan of the legislators, and I did make a couple of comments. I mean, it wasn't a big part of my platform, but I did say that I would try to have that repealed, which I put a bill in to repeal it. It did not, they would not repeal it because they said they're totally wrong, but I'm still going to try to do it because I'd like to get that money back that those that are getting it are getting. But anyway, we did stop it. And I not to tout my own horn here, but actually that pension plan would still be intact today if it wasn't for me in the last legislature. Although I never got any glory and I never got any press, but you can ask anybody in the House of Representatives. We all got onto this bill and we did pass it out of pensions. I also serve on pensions. But the whole idea was, I don't know if you know much about the process, but it goes from the House, it goes to the Senate, and then if you don't agree, it goes to conference committee. Well, if they don't pass it out of conference committee, it just stays in there for umpteen. Well, that's what was happening, and that was the plan, was to put it in conference and not pull it up. But I was going to make the motion to concur with our report, to concur with the motion. Well, when being a freshman and knowing that these legislators didn't want to do that, when it got out, that I went down to leadership and said, I'm going to make a motion to concur with this for a big mistake. Because what they then did was to call the Senate Conference Committee together again. Mm-hmm. Then they acted on the bill. They cleaned it up because they knew now I was going to bring it out and people would have to vote on it and pass it. So they held the House. We didn't go into session for 2 hours so that they could work this bill on the Senate side, get it through the Senate, and then my motion to concur would be moot because it would have already been handled through the Senate side, and that's what they did. And so I was really responsible for getting that stopped. But most people will never know that. But it was a real learning experience for me.
It was. First year always is, isn't it? Now, you're talking about the pension issue. Were there issues that you would identify as women's issues that you've worked on?
Well, I think that in those areas, the main thing we have to be, myself as a woman and a mother, that I look for, and red flags go up, or the tons of children's initiative issues that have gone through this interim. The Education Committee is trying to totally obliterate any family and any concerns that you would have for family. They want to take our children at 3 months and start institutionalizing them, and in my mind, brainwashing them to what the state thinks they should know. They tout this Parents as Teachers program as the greatest thing since sliced bread, and I think it's the most devastating thing that could happen to a family, because all these things look good on the surface, but when you find out what's behind them, which nobody does, then you start to see the real decay of the American family that these people's agenda is supporting. But most people don't see it and don't want to see it. And so as a woman, I don't support barely anything they do up here, because they're really not, they're not in support of the family. They're to destroy the family. And the taxing subdivisions do that. The Education Committee does it. Every committee up here that does anything is really negative to the family and to women. If you want to take that as a women's issue, to women in general.
Yeah, probably it isn't just a women's issue, though. I mean, family issues are sort of both men and women.
No.
I don't know whether you even agree that there should be such a thing as a name like women's issue.
Well, if they want to talk about, they're trying to revive on a national level the ERA. We've killed that thing 9,000 times, and it should remain dead. That movement is not supportive of women. There's a case in point where it's really not a supportive role for women. If you want to talk equal pay for equal work, fine, but that's not the ERA, and that's not what the ERA does. Yes, I'm for equal pay for equal women. Give me a break. But as far as on this sexual harassment issue and stuff. I mean, that has been around since the beginning of time. You can't legislate those kinds of things.
That's interesting. How would you, if you had to put a label on yourself, how would you describe yourself? Are you a liberal, conservative, or what?
I am probably the most conservative legislator up here, period. As I have several Republican friends, men, that say I'm definitely the most conservative woman up here, but I would probably go so far as to say I am the most conservative legislator up here.
Okay, now as a freshman, do you have a mentor? Do you have someone, was there anyone here that kind of took you under their wing and helped you find your way around?
Well, they have a mentor program up here, and the Republicans did appoint one to me, which he spoke to me twice, and he votes almost totally opposite of me, so I thought that was a pretty poor choice on the part of Republican leadership. So he hasn't been much of a mentor to me. There are a few, actually I don't have a lot of legislator friends or close ties. I think partly because last year I took Alex with me everywhere, and people just don't want to associate or be, I don't know, they were offended or just didn't want to, they wanted to talk, for whatever reasons, that they just didn't, I didn't make any close friends. I didn't have any this year or so far, and I have 2 babies this year, and I go home a lot more, so the opportunity's not there to get close to any legislator. But there are a few legislators whose opinion I do value and watch in certain areas. We don't agree in all areas, but I would say probably on the Republican side, for a legislator that's been around a while and knows a lot and probably pretty conservative, I'd say Bob Van Crum is somebody that I look up to or I admire. Now I've only been called on him for his information maybe once or twice, but I watch him and listen to him in caucus, and I admire him greatly. Now Melvin Newfield's a pretty conservative legislator. He's only served 1 term, then was defeated, and then got reelected. So he's not a long term, but he's very informative. He knows a lot. So I, on issues that I don't know a lot about, I'll ask him sometimes, and he's also my seatmate, so I tend to ask him. But basically, I pretty much read the bills and study them myself and vote my own conscience. I think I probably hold the record for 124-1 votes in the House.
You're the one.
I'm the one.
Okay. What committees are you on?
I serve on pensions. I serve on labor and industry, insurance, and local government.
Okay. You're not a minority minority leader on any, or minority?
No, because I'm a freshman, so I don't serve in any leadership.
Okay. What bills, we kind of talked about some of them, maybe all of them, what bills have you introduced and sponsored? Now, you talked about some you worked on indirectly that didn't actually bear your name or anything.
Well, I did file 3 pension bills last year in my own name, and I'm going to continue to fight for those. I think one of the biggest problems in state government is state government, they come back, and these people come back year after year after year asking for more money. It drives me nuts. I sit in pensions, like today we had a meeting at noon, and they're all back asking for more money, and I just sit there, and it's so funny when he takes the motion to introduce the bill. We took motions to introduce bills today, and it was all those in favor, all those opposed, and he always looks at me for the opposition. Because I'm telling you, I just have a hard time. The biggest, most frustrating thing for me as a legislator is that I cannot, in good conscience, believe that these people are voting their districts. They can't be. Not all of them. Not when you have a 15-member committee. I cannot believe that 14 of those people, all those people would vote for all that money increase in general fund, which is your tax dollars. I can't believe it.
No, that's a good question. Can you think, in addition to the pension issue, are there any other issues that you felt were really major defeats or major victories last year during the session, and so far this year? You haven't really hardly done
No,
much
we haven't
this
done
year.
any votes. No, it's a pretty frustrating year for me. I guess the only thing I can say, and it had nothing to do with me, was Governor Finney did veto the tax increase bill that would have been passed on to taxpayers. A lot of people consider that a defeat that she did that. I felt that was a great victory for my people, but because I voted down all appropriations bill and all tax increases, because it's government that's got to be curtailed, not tax and spend mentality. We'll take it from here if we don't get it from there and make up. That is not the philosophy I'm up here with.
Did you have any particular experience that was memorable because it was humorous or embarrassing or wonderful? Maybe not related to victories, but just experiences.
No, I suppose that experience with the pension bill where they actually held the House for 2 hours without coming, putting us in session so that they could work this bill and work it, which was new to me, and I didn't understand that because I was pretty new, and so that took me by surprise. I also offered those pension bills that in committee. Well, they weren't going to give me a hearing. Well, pensions only meets once a week, and he said, "Well, I don't know if we can hear those bills." And I said, "Why not? We only meet one lousy day a week. You should hold a hearing on every bill you have before you, and I want a hearing." He didn't want to do it, but he did give me a hearing, but then, of course, he took no action on my bills at all. So I did take those as amendments onto the floor on a pension bill that was going through, and fought the good fight and argued for 2 hours and a half down there, and only could get 30 votes. And there again, it amazes me. And I told I don't think anybody up here really likes me very much because I just don't play games that they play. And when I was arguing those bills, my first amendment went down. I mean, it was pretty defeating. I was pretty upset. But I said, well, I'm going to argue this on principle. And the principle ought to carry it through, but it didn't. So I said, well, if we can't, and I said this to him and everybody laughed, and I said, well, I didn't think that was going to go over, so if we can't vote by principle, let's vote with some reality here. Let's get into, life and stuff. And then, so that was a pretty frustrating experience for me, and I was very upset, and I was probably 8 months pregnant at the time. So the defeat was pretty emotional on my, I cried for about 2.5 hours after I lost those. And I probably always will. I'm pretty emotional. It doesn't mean I'm really upset. It's just I'm emotional and I cry over those things. But this year I'm going to be, I wasn't real vocal at the mic last year. But this year, when those bills come and people aren't going down and showing the other side, I think I'm going to be a little more vocal this year.
Are you, now I'm going to ask you some questions. Well, let me back up a minute. There are 45 women this year in the House and the Senate. 40, let's see, 9, that'd be 30, 36.
Yeah, I thought we had like 38 women.
Yeah, 37, 38.
Something like that.
How effective are women as legislators in your eyes? And just comparing them with men.
Well, I think they're effective. I think that women can do every bit of, there's a lot of women. They say the attorneys have the upper hand. Well, there's a lot of women attorneys up here. I think women are just as astute and just as sharp as any man on the floor.
Just as effective.
I believe so. I don't think there's any discrimination or that, I mean, they have a vote just like the man does, so they can be every bit as effective as the man.
Okay, I'm going to ask you some questions now just about you and the relationship of your private life a little bit with your role as a legislator. Are you a native of Kansas?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Where were you born and when?
Yeah, I was born in Wichita in 1953.
So you're native all the way.
Native, right.
Okay, can you describe your childhood and growing up? Were you in town, out of town, brothers, sisters, schools, etc.?
Well, I'm the second of 6, and we're only 10 years apart, so we're all pretty close together. I was raised in the city of Wichita. We moved quite frequently. I often can remember the grade schools by the house I was living in, and I went to 5 grade schools, 2 junior highs, and 1 high school.
Oh my goodness!
So we moved quite frequently. Lived in all areas of town, and it was, 6 kids, and just,
Yeah. What are your parents' names?
Mary Ann is my father, my mother, and Carol is my dad.
What's your mother's maiden name?
Nardine,
Okay.
and she's from Colorado.
What kind of things did you do as you were growing up? Did you like to do?
Oh, I'm trying to think. Let's see. Well, when I was, probably by the time I got to junior high and stuff, I wanted to be lots of things. I wanted to be an interior designer at one time. I wanted to be a lawyer at one time. I liked to sew in those days, and just run around. I liked to dance. By the time I got to high school, I really liked to dance. And political things was the farthest thing from my mind. I was not active. I wasn't a young Republican or a young anything. I just had no, I was into fun. I had a boyfriend. My mother said she never worried about me marrying too young because I had a new boyfriend every 2 weeks. So I was pretty much just wanting to go out and have a good time.
Well, did you debate in high school?
No, didn't debate. I just went through high school by not the skin of my teeth. I made average grades. I wasn't an honor roll student, and I like most, I took the path of least resistance. I didn't pick real hard topics that I had to take. I took what would get me through, and I was, that was it.
What kind of work did your dad do, and did your mother?
Yes, my mother's always worked. She was a waitress when I was very young, food and cocktail waitress, and then she tended bar in like the Plaza Club, the Petroleum Club. She worked there for years. And then she worked, my dad used to drive a cab when I was infant type, and then he started the Best Cab Truck Express in Wichita and built it up to like 300 trucks. And then this is a classic case of the education community, because he didn't have my dad went through 11th grade and that was all. My mother only went through the 8th grade. When he got it up to 300 trucks, they figured he didn't have the capability to run it anymore because he didn't have a college degree, and they fired him, which was a devastating blow to my dad. And he went out, and we had 6 kids, and we were pretty poor. I mean, I wasn't poor, but I wasn't rich by any stretch of the imagination. And he started.
Well, that's interesting. What's the name of the business he started?
It's Carol's Delivery. My dad's namesake.
He's still doing it then?
Well, my dad did it for 30 years. My dad got glaucoma, and he's now blind, and he wanted to keep the business in the family. And so when he first diversified, he gave divided up among 3 of the children. My sister took part, I took part, and my brother took part. I was living in Hawaii, and my husband and I moved back to Wichita to take over part of the business.
That's interesting. Let me back up to your school days and then to now too. What organizations? Now you said you didn't debate, but that's really not an organization. What high school and after high school organizations have you been a member of?
None.
None. Okay.
I pretty much in high school I wasn't even in the pep squad. I mean, high school. Those people were so immature. Everybody that I knew was much older. I dated much older men, and the guy that took me to high school prom was 27. I didn't run with anybody in high school. That just wasn't my thing.
Okay, because some people had organizations they felt like influenced them or maybe taught them skills that they later have used in the legislature. But if you didn't want an organization, then
no, for the most part, no.
Okay. Now you mentioned the partnership or owning part of your father's business or whatever. What other occupations have you had?
Oh, I've done lots of things in my time. I don't know if I should put this on the tape. I've done some pretty. Well, I'm trying to think. Let's see, what have I done? I mainly when I got out of high school, I pretty much when I was in high school, I only had one job, and I worked at a theater in the concessions. And when my grades went down, I had to quit. And they do. When you work in a theater 3 to 11, your grades go down. So I had to quit. But that was probably my first job. And then I always drove a truck for my dad in the delivery business, in the summers. Once I turned 16, I worked for my dad.
What kind of a truck did you drive?
Well, just a pickup truck, yeah, and
Make deliveries.
So pretty small. And then after high school, I was sold clothes in a boutique for a while when I was traveling around, when I lived in New Orleans and stuff. Then I went to school quite a bit. I went to Wichita Business College for a while and was going to court reporting college. And I did go to Friends for a semester right after school and then decided that's not really what I wanted to do. Then I moved to New Orleans and joked around there for a couple of years. And then I ended up in Denver and went to court reporting school.
Oh, that's
there.
where you went to court reporting school.
And went to court reporting school out there. Court reporting school is kind of funny. I mean, I didn't stay and get a diploma or anything like that. You achieve it and pass your state bar in whatever state you're going to practice and go on. But I left there and I ended up sailing to Hawaii on a private yacht. I'm an adventurous sort, and I've done crazy things. I've danced in bars. So, you know, I have a well-rounded education of life. I've done a lot, but I've never been in trouble. You know, I've never been involved drugs. I never experimented with. I never smoked. I've had my fun and games as a youth and as an adult, but I never, you know, and I sailed to Hawaii, stayed there, and went to work for a court reporting firm, and was a legal secretary there for a year. And so I, you know, that's pretty much.
But court reporting sort of is your education.
Yeah.
You're not doing
law.
it. You said you're not doing it.
No, I gave that up after I got married.
How old were you when you were elected to the legislature?
36.
36, okay. That's interesting. Everybody's been either 36 or 37. I think it's almost unreal in this session. Now, we're doing a little study of that. We're not through yet. Okay, you've mentioned your husband several times. What does he do? And he stays in Wichita. What is his occupation?
Well, he runs, we have part of the delivery business.
Oh, okay.
And he runs that. Now, last year was my first year, and when I won, we hired an employee to help with the delivery business because we got an answering service and take over some of the functions that I did. But because this isn't a profitable business, it nearly put us under. Because we're overtaxed, we could pay the salary, but we couldn't keep up with all the taxes we had to pay on this individual that we had. And so we had to let him go. And this year, my husband's doing it all by himself. And see, he used to come up, you know, a couple of days. He brought my pages up every month and spend time with us. But now I only see him on the weekends, and he's doing that. But we also, speaking of entrepreneurs, we have a small print shop in our garage. And so my husband prints when he's not running the delivery business. He wanted to get that up and going at full time, but financially, we just can't cover.
So he would like to be here, but he can't be here very much. So you go back to Wichita
every weekend.
But you have your children here.
I brought both babies.
And you had them last session?
I had Carrie, between the end of the regular session and the start of the veto session. We generally have a couple weeks, but we had 10 days last year, and he was born on the 6th day. He was 4 days old when we came back to the session.
And you didn't miss a day?
Didn't miss a day. Oh, no, he was 4 days old, and we came right up, and I brought a little basket, and I nursed him. And, I mean, it made veto much more interesting for me than the rest of the legislators, I'll tell you. It was much more enjoyable, I should say.
Well, now, who helps you this year? Your mother helps you. Did you have someone to help you last year?
Well, last year, no. I brought Alex, and what I did was on Mondays and Fridays, we're generally only on the House floor. We don't have committee meetings. So I brought him with me to the Capitol on Mondays and Fridays. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays, he was with a sitter up here, but one of those 3 days I left early as my schedule would permit, and so he was with a sitter 2.5 days a week, sometimes. A couple of weeks he stayed home with his dad, and some days he was more with me. And then as far as the social calendar in the evening, I took him with me every night.
So he didn't miss you too much.
No, he didn't miss me too much.
As a legislator, what do you think will be your major contribution? I think you've hinted at several things you're working on, and it's maybe early to decide this, but could you
Well, I'll tell you, there are a lot of things after being up here. I mean, I wouldn't trade running, making the sacrifice to run. I'm very glad I won because that's a lot of work to lose. And I'm glad I'm here. As to how much I can do as an individual, I don't know. Because I'm hoping in 92 elections, when I am going to run next year, and I'm hoping that people are awake enough and they're aware enough and they're going to get out and they're going to replace these people that are running their own agendas as opposed to what the people really want. So therefore, I'm hoping for a more conservative legislature next year. If we get that and we can effectively really do some government changes, I'll probably stay in for a while. If not, I'll probably retire and raise my boys as my major priority. But I suppose if I do serve only the 2 terms, that my biggest contribution, I think, is that I can wake up and make people aware of what's really going on. Because I believe a lot of these people just vote. I mean, I don't believe there's a person in that legislature that would vote 124-1. I believe when they see all those green lights going, they push green. Whether they agree or don't agree or want to or don't. Because of, I don't know why they can't have any backbone, but that's their problem. But I look at the bills and I look at what they're doing and what they're not doing, and that's how I vote. I don't look up at the wall first to see, and I believe many of them do, and so I'm here to educate the legislators. Or try, inform them.
How do you think this, your being in the legislature will affect your children? I mean, what type of, do you feel like it's a sacrifice for them or benefit or kind of a...
I think it's both. I think Alex loves to come to the Capitol. He's only 2, but this summer we took a trip back east I went to a conference back there, and he first, he sees a dome and it's the Capitol, and he knows it's the Capitol. We went to, Lincoln Memorial and all these things, and he comes home and picks up a penny and says, Lincoln, Lincoln, and I'm going, and I'm going to homeschool this boy. He knows more than I do right now. And so I think Alex, I wish they were a little bit older, actually, but they're not. But Kerry, unless I serve a long time, he won't really remember. Alex will remember, and he loves to come here, and he loves to ride the cage elevator. But he misses Mom, so it's But I think he's going to like it, and I think he's going to participate in government, and we'll have slides and names and campaigns, and he'll see his picture with the governor with my pages one day.
That's right. He'll remember it that way, won't he? Well, do you think that being in the legislature so far has changed you in any way, or the way people perceive you?
Oh, I imagine that some of the people that voted for me before they knew me might change their perception, but then I think a lot of people that didn't vote for me will vote for me next time because of who I am and what I've done or not done.
And your newsletters are a big factor.
Big hit. I sent out a letter last week and sent it to registered voters in my district, and I got 6 responses. And I didn't ask for a response. I just sent them out, and that's good because a lot, like I say, in my district, you just don't get a lot of feedback.
Well, other than financial, and you've mentioned the financial cost to your business of you being gone and everything, do you think it's really costing your family a lot of money for you to be around?
Well, I think the pay compensates for me being here. It doesn't compensate for the money I'm losing in the business that I run. Okay, but it's equitable as far as meeting the needs of me having to be up here. It does do that, but it doesn't compensate. But then, how can you do that? Anybody can say, oh, I can make thousands more dollars if I was in private practice, attorneys or judges, So, they might do something there, but I'm not going to be the first person saying, give me more money.
Yeah. Well, let me just ask you, kind of related to that, we have determined now in studying this that up to 1974, there were never more than 4 women in the Kansas legislature. After 1974, and since then, every year the number has grown by leaps and bounds till we get to 45 this year, which is even more than last year. Can you explain, you weren't in the legislature in 74 in that time frame, can you hazard a guess? Could it have something to do with compensation, or why are there growing numbers of women? Do you think it's the
I don't think it's the compensation. I think it's just more women getting involved in the field.
Okay.
would be my basic, off the top of my head, answer for that. I believe that just more and more women are doing more and more things, and more women are, I'm a firm believer in the Bible, and I did have some trouble in my church when I decided to run because they thought that wasn't my position to do that. But I pointed out there's several cases in the Bible where when a good man wasn't there, the Lord used a good woman. And so therefore I think some women are taking up the slack that the men in our country have given up.
Good. That is good answer to the question. I mean, it's a kind of a hard question, but that's a good approach. Do you think then that the people in your church, when you said that, do you think they changed their expectations for women then? Or just made an exception, or how?
No, I think those that are adamant that a woman's place is not in authority over men, which is the main argument there, is they still believe that. Now, whether they believe that I'm doing any good or not good, their argument is, should I be there? It's not what I accomplish or don't accomplish, it's should I be there? And, but like I said, but most do believe that I should be here. Now, I would have a problem with running for president, because I would usurp all men by being president, and that I would have a personal problem with. As a legislator, I don't feel like I'm usurping a man's authority role over me. I'm just a partner in making decisions. But see, my head is my husband, and he supports me. Now, if I did it outside of him, that I would, scripturally, we're talking about, then I might have a problem. But I think for the most part, the people in my church that are adamant, or Christians that know me that have espouse that view, most of them that live in my district would vote for me and would support me. I don't think that they would not vote for me because that I'm, out of the will of the Lord, because I believe that all they have to do is look at my life and look at how I won and know that the Lord's hand is in it and that He wants me there. And then when they see that, I don't think they have a problem voting for me. I mean, anybody that can look at me and see that my baby came on the 6th day of the break instead of in the session or out, knows that the Lord wants me here. So.
Well, this isn't one of the questions I ask most people because most of them haven't had an experience like this, but what was it like to have a baby right in the middle of it?
Well, I don't know. It wasn't any problem for me. I think the biggest surprise for me was finding out 3 weeks after I won the election that I was pregnant. I couldn't believe it, and I didn't know what to do because I thought, I can't. I mean, these people fought hard. I didn't win by much, but these people, I won. I can't let them down. I can't resign. And at that time, I didn't know anybody or have an inkling of who would replace me if I resigned. So I felt like that wasn't an option. So I just thought, well, I just said, Lord, you let me win, so and you knew I was pregnant, and you didn't let me know because you knew I'd withdraw. See, I wouldn't have run had I known. But the Lord, I believe, wanted me here, and therefore I didn't find out till I was 5 months pregnant when I found out. Can you believe that? Had the baby April 20th, and like I say, we were on break for 10 days, but it was no problem. I mean, how much of a problem can a new baby be? All he does is eat and sleep. Well, I guess my first one, that's all he did. I mean, some babies scream and holler, and the second one never did either. But I believe it's all in the love and care you give them. You hold them, and they're not going to cry. And I nursed him. I'd sit in the ladies' lounge there and just listen to all the debate and nurse him come out, and I'd hold him all the time. But everybody would say, gee, Darlene, don't you want to go down and do something, or do you need help, eating, or something? I said, no, I'm fine. But they looked for reasons to hold him. And I had a little basket that I brought, though, that I could lay him down if I had to ride or do things, and I put it right by my desk. And he went through the 10-day veto session, no problem. Nobody'd even know I'd had him if they didn't.
You must have felt pretty good.
I felt, shoot, everybody's saying, what are you doing back here in 4 days? With both my boys, I went in, had them, and was home in 10 hours.
So you had him in Wichita?
Yeah, went home and had him.
Did you have Plan B in case he came while you were here?
Well, I was seeing a doctor here because my weekly visits, I couldn't get home to see my doctor. So I was going to use a midwife here and have him have them, if it came to that. I was not going to have a hospital. I would use a midwife here. But it didn't come to that. But I did have, in case. But I just felt like the Lord knew, and He just wasn't going to make me have my baby in Topeka without my husband and my family here. He just wouldn't do that, and He didn't.
Well, in our research, it seems like there are not very many women till this year, and there were, of course, 4 of you this year that had babies. In fact, the only other one we really determined even was pregnant while she was a legislator was Marion Reynolds in the, I think it's 75 or somewhere in that. So you kind of set a record this year.
Yeah, I know.
And it is interesting it will be interesting to sort of get some response from other people to this. And, your response is important too, about if everyone had the same experience of, I think how you feel probably would be a factor in it.
I didn't have any problem. I didn't have any problem being pregnant and keeping up with the energy or anything.
Do you think, and I guess this is going back a little bit to this other question, do you think that women who have young children are at a disadvantage because maybe people won't vote for them? I mean, running for office.
I don't know. I don't think as far as voting.
You don't think
the
people will
electorate,
say, well, they ought to stay home with their kids?
Well, they're. Gee, does anybody believe that anymore? I mean, I fundamentally believe that philosophy.
You're right.
So, I don't think that's going to be a handicap as far as voting. I think the disadvantage comes once you're here.
Okay.
Because I believe that's where I'm at a disadvantage, because I don't have the close relationships, because I'm spending time with my family. Nobody calls me and says, Darlene, do you want to go to this function? Nobody says, do you want to go to lunch? They just automatically, I don't think it's not because they don't like me as an individual. I think they just automatically assume that I've got something else going on. And so they don't ask me, and therefore I'm the one that's disadvantaged. My kids get me, and my voters get what they need, but I'm losing the personal relationships of legislators up here. So I think I'm the loser in this game.
That's interesting. That's really, really a new approach. I mean, a different situation than they've had before because of that. Do you think, is there anything I haven't asked you about this that you would like to share in this interview? Is there any particular observations you would like to make? Or you can call me later if you think of something later.
Think of something really critical or important. I don't know. I think that all citizens of Kansas should come and spend a day in the gallery. I think every civics class ought to come up and teach those young people what government really is and how it works. Because I believe that the citizens could come up here and come up on a day when we're voting something important and watch those lights change from red to green, red to green, red to green. They would see how important it is to send somebody up that has morals and ethics, regardless of which way they vote. The fact that they will say what they stand and stand by what they say, these people don't do that. They look, and if it looks like it's going one way or the other, they say, well, if it'll pass, I don't want to be recorded as voting no, so I'll change. But then if they see it's going to fail, they go, well, they don't really need my vote, so they switch back. And or we could pass, which it would never pass because these legislators always protect themselves, that your vote is your vote, period.
Can't change.
Can't change it.
That'd be
Put them online. Then they think before they push that button. But see, that'll never go over up here. Ethics, you want to talk about ethics? That's something they don't have up here. You can pass all the ethics reform bills, but if it's not in you before you get here, those bills aren't going to do anything for you. So, but I don't know. I think government's important, and I think a lot can be done. I just think the people need to get it back, but they have to do it themselves. We don't need to legislate. My slogan when I ran was educate, not legislate. And that's, get the people informed, but also to be responsible. See, we've turned the people into a welfare society. They look to the government for everything, and they don't want to be responsible, and that's why education's got all these things, because the parents, I mean, it's just a big vicious circle, and now the bureaucracy perpetuates itself. Now you can't get rid of those programs because you'll eliminate 2,000 jobs, for crying out loud. Well, heaven forbid that we'd eliminate a state employee.
It's interesting.
So,
well,
but it's, I'm glad I'm here, and I hope I, win re-election, and, and at least get down there, and at least I'll give them a different way to look at things, because I don't think anybody quite looks at it the way I see it.
Well, that's great. Well, I really appreciate your